A great king stands in his own bathroom. He just won the biggest war in the ancient world. He is powerful. He is famous. He is home, safe at last. Then his own wife throws a net over him. She traps him like a fish. Then she kills him with an axe. This is not an enemy soldier. This is his wife. How does the most powerful king in Greece die like this, trapped and helpless inside his own home? Why did the woman closest to him want him dead so badly? To answer that, you have to go back to the beginning. This is the story of Agamemnon, the king who led Greece to war. And here is the truth behind his story. Agamemnon's family was cursed, and every choice he made the curse stronger. Long before Agamemnon was born, his family carried a dark secret. It started with a man named Tantalus. Tantalus was rich. Tantalus was proud. Tantalus was so proud that he tried to trick the gods. One day, Tantalus invited the gods to a feast, but he served them something terrible. He served them his own son. The gods saw through the trick right away. They were angry, very angry. They punished Tantalus forever, and they placed a curse on his entire family. That curse would follow every child, every grandchild, every generation. It would follow the family for hundreds of years. It would follow them all the way to Agamemnon. Years later, two brothers from this cursed family fought for a throne. Their names were Atreus and Thyestes. They both wanted to rule the city of Mycenae. They both wanted power. Neither one would share it. Atreus won the throne first, but Thyestes did not accept this. Thyestes tried to take the throne for himself. He even had a secret relationship with his own brother's wife. When Atreus found out, he became furious. He decided on a horrible revenge. Atreus invited Thyestes to a peace dinner. He said, "Let us end this fight. Let us eat together as brothers." Thyestes believed him. He came to the feast, hungry and hopeful. But Atreus had a secret plan. He had already killed Thyestes' own sons, 3 young boys. Then he cooked their bodies and served them to their father as the meal. Thyestes ate the food. He did not know the truth. He ate his own children without knowing it. After the meal, Atreus showed him the truth. He showed him the small hands and feet of his sons. Thyestes was horrified. He screamed. He cursed his brother's entire bloodline. He cursed every child that would ever come from that family. This curse would not stop with Atreus. It would not stop with one generation. It would pass down again and again like a disease inside the family's blood. Then the curse passed on. Atreus had 2 sons. Their names were Agamemnon and Menelaus. They grew up inside a palace full of secrets, full of blood, full of fear. When the 2 boys were still young, their family was attacked. Thyestes' son, a man named Aegisthus, came back for revenge. He killed Atreus, the father of Agamemnon and Menelaus. The 2 young princes had to run for their lives. They escaped the palace as children, alone, with no home and no protection. But Agamemnon did not stay weak for long. He grew up strong and determined. Years later, he returned to Mycenae. He took back his father's throne by force. He became king. To make his position stronger, Agamemnon needed a powerful marriage. He chose a woman named Clytemnestra. She came from a royal family in Sparta. She was smart. She was strong-willed. She was not a woman who forgot things easily. But their marriage did not start with love. It started with violence. Before he married Clytemnestra, Agamemnon killed her first husband. He also killed her baby son from that marriage. Then he forced Clytemnestra to marry him instead. Clytemnestra had no choice. She became Agamemnon's wife, but somewhere deep inside her she remembered everything. She remembered her dead husband. She remembered her dead child. She never forgot. At the same time, Agamemnon's brother Menelaus also married well. He married a woman named Helen. Helen was known across all of Greece for her incredible beauty. People said she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Because of this marriage, Menelaus became king of Sparta. Now the 2 brothers ruled 2 powerful cities. Agamemnon ruled Mycenae. Menelaus ruled Sparta. Together they controlled much of Greece. But peace never lasted long in this family. The curse was still alive. It was only waiting for the right moment. Then Troy took everything. Far across the sea there was another kingdom. It was called Troy. Troy was rich. Troy was powerful, and Troy had a young prince named Paris. One day, Paris visited Sparta. He was a guest inside King Menelaus's own palace, but Paris did something unforgivable. He took Helen, the wife of Menelaus, and brought her back to Troy with him. Some old stories say Helen went willingly. Other stories say she was taken by force, but the result was the same. Helen was gone, and Menelaus was furious. Menelaus needed help. He could not fight Troy alone. So he went to his older brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae. Agamemnon saw an opportunity. This was not only about his brother's honor. This was a chance to attack Troy, a rich and powerful rival. This was a chance to gain more land, more gold, and more glory for himself. There was also an old promise that helped Agamemnon. Years earlier, many kings across Greece had sworn an oath. They promised that if anyone ever took Helen away, they would all fight together to bring her back. Now, that oath had to be honored. Agamemnon called on every king, every prince, and every warrior who had made that promise. Messengers traveled across all of Greece. Soldiers packed their weapons. Armies prepared their ships. Slowly, an enormous force began to gather at a place called Aulis. Ships arrived from every corner of Greece. More than 1,000 ships gathered together in one place. It was the largest army Greece had ever seen. Among the warriors was a young man named Achilles. He was known as the greatest fighter in all of Greece. Many believed no army could defeat him. His presence gave the Greek soldiers confidence. Agamemnon stood at the head of this massive fleet. He was chosen as the supreme commander of all the Greek forces. Every king would follow his orders. Every soldier would fight under his flag. It should have been the beginning of a great victory. But then, something went wrong. Then the wind stopped. At Aulis, more than 1,000 ships waited by the shore. The soldiers were ready. The weapons were sharp. Everything was prepared for war. But there was one problem. There was no wind. Without wind, the ships could not sail. Day after day, the fleet stayed still. The soldiers grew restless. Food supplies started running low. Anger and frustration spread through the camp. Agamemnon needed an answer. He turned to a priest named Calchas, a man who could speak with the gods. Calchas gave him terrible news. He said that the goddess Artemis was angry with Agamemnon. Some stories say Agamemnon had insulted her by killing one of her sacred animals. Because of this insult, Artemis refused to send wind to the Greek ships. Calchas said there was only one way to fix this. Agamemnon had to sacrifice something precious to him. He had to sacrifice his own daughter, a young girl named Iphigenia. Agamemnon was horrified. No father wants to hear these words, but the pressure around him was enormous. Thousands of soldiers were waiting. Powerful kings were watching him closely. If he refused, he would lose their trust and his position as leader. So Agamemnon made a terrible choice. He sent a message to his wife, Clytemnestra, back home in Mycenae. But the message was a lie. He told her that Iphigenia would marry the great warrior Achilles. He asked Clytemnestra to bring their daughter to Aulis for the wedding. Clytemnestra was overjoyed. She believed her daughter was about to become the wife of the most famous hero in Greece. She traveled to Aulis with Iphigenia, full of hope and pride. But there was no wedding waiting for them. There was only an altar. When Iphigenia arrived, she understood the terrible truth too late. Her own father had lied to her. Her own father was going to take her life. Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter at the altar. Some old stories say the gods pitied her and saved her at the last moment. Other stories say she truly died that day. But in every version of this story, one fact stays the same. Agamemnon chose the war over his own daughter. After the sacrifice, the wind finally returned. The Greek ships raised their sails. The massive fleet finally began to move toward Troy. But something else had also started that day. Clytemnestra's grief turned into something darker. Her sadness slowly transformed into anger, and that anger would not disappear. It would grow silently inside her heart year after year, waiting for its moment. Agamemnon's family was cursed, and every choice he made the curse stronger. His father had served a child as a meal. Now Agamemnon had sacrificed his own daughter for war. The fleet sailed toward Troy, full of confidence and power. Then the war began. The Greek army landed near Troy with confidence. They believed victory would come quickly. They were wrong. Troy had strong walls. Troy had brave defenders. Troy had a prince named Hector, one of the greatest warriors in the world. The Greek army could not break through the city's defenses. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. 10 years passed. 10 long years of fighting outside the walls of Troy. Soldiers died. Supplies ran low. Families back home waited for news that never came. Still, the war continued. During this long war, Agamemnon made another mistake. This mistake would almost destroy the entire Greek army from the inside. There was a young woman named Briseis. She had been captured during the war and given to Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior. But Agamemnon wanted her for himself. He used his power as supreme commander to take her away from Achilles. Achilles was furious. He felt disrespected. He felt betrayed by his own commander, so Achilles made a powerful decision. He refused to fight anymore. Without Achilles, the Greek army grew weak. Their strongest warrior stayed inside his tent, refusing to help. The Trojan army pushed forward. They won battle after battle. The Greek soldiers began to lose hope. Many Greek leaders came to Agamemnon and told him the truth. His pride had caused this disaster. His decision to take Briseis had almost cost them the entire war. Eventually, tragedy forced Achilles back into battle. His closest friend, Patroclus, was killed by the Trojan prince Hector. Filled with grief and anger, Achilles returned to the fight. He killed Hector in single combat, and the momentum of the war began to shift again. But even with Achilles back, Troy still would not fall. The city's walls were too strong. Direct attacks kept failing. The Greeks needed something different. They needed a trick. Then the horse arrived. The Greeks used a clever plan to finally get inside the city. It is one of the most famous tricks in all of history, and you likely already know it well. The plan worked. That night Troy fell. A city that had stood strong for 10 long years collapsed in a single night. Fires burned through the streets. The great city of Troy was gone forever. Then Troy became ashes. After the city fell, the Greek soldiers took everything of value. Gold, treasures, and prisoners were loaded onto the ships. Among the prisoners was a Trojan princess named Cassandra. Cassandra was not an ordinary prisoner. She had a strange and painful gift. She could see the future. But there was a terrible curse attached to her gift. No one ever believed her predictions, no matter how true they were. Agamemnon took Cassandra as part of his prize. He brought her onto his ship, planning to take her home to Mycenae as a slave. During the journey home, Cassandra saw something terrible. She saw death waiting for them both in Mycenae. She saw blood on the palace floor. She tried to warn the soldiers around her, but just like always, nobody listened. Nobody ever believed Cassandra. The ship sailed slowly across the sea, carrying treasure, prisoners, and one silent, terrified woman who already knew how the story would end. Agamemnon believed he was returning home as a hero. He believed his people would celebrate his victory. He had no idea that his own wife had been waiting 10 long years for this exact moment. Agamemnon's family was cursed, and every choice he made the curse stronger. He had sacrificed his daughter for wind. He had insulted his best warrior for pride. Now he was sailing home, straight toward the wife whose heart he had broken years before. Then he walked into the trap. Agamemnon's ship finally arrived at the shores near Mycenae. After 10 years away, he was finally home. His soldiers cheered. His heart was full of pride. Waiting for him was his wife, Clytemnestra. She did not look angry. She did not look cold. She smiled. She welcomed him with open arms. She had prepared a grand welcome. She laid down a long red carpet for him to walk on, a special honor usually saved only for the gods. Agamemnon hesitated at first. Such an honor felt too grand for a mortal man, but Clytemnestra insisted, and slowly his pride won. He stepped onto the red path and walked toward his palace like a king returning to glory. But this warm welcome was not real. It was a mask. For 10 long years, Clytemnestra had never forgotten what Agamemnon did to their daughter Iphigenia. She never forgot the lie he told her. She never forgot the sacrifice at the altar. Her sadness had slowly turned into something much stronger. It had turned into a plan. During those same 10 years, Clytemnestra had also formed a secret relationship. She had grown close to a man named Aegisthus, the son of Thyestes. Remember him. He was the same man whose father had once been fed his own children at that terrible feast generations before. Aegisthus also had his own reasons for hatred. His family had suffered greatly at the hands of Agamemnon's father, Atreus. Now, two people with two different pains had joined together with one single goal. That night, Agamemnon prepared to relax. After 10 years of war, after a long journey home, he decided to take a bath. He believed he was finally safe. He was wrong. While he stood in the bath, defenseless and unarmed, Clytemnestra came in quietly. She threw a large net over him. The net trapped his arms. It trapped his legs. He could not move. He could not fight back. He could not protect himself. Then Clytemnestra picked up an axe. She struck him once, twice. Again. The powerful king of Mycenae, the man who commanded 1,000 ships, the man who led Greece to war, died helpless inside his own bathtub. Cassandra, the prisoner who could see the future but was never believed, was killed shortly after. She had seen this moment coming from the very first day. She knew there was nothing she could do to stop it. Agamemnon's family was cursed, and every choice he made the curse stronger. He believed he had won the war, but the real danger was never in Troy. It was waiting quietly inside his own home for 10 patient years. Then the curse turned again. After Agamemnon's death, Clytemnestra and Aegisthus took control of Mycenae. They ruled together as king and queen. For a while, it seemed like their plan had succeeded completely. But Agamemnon had another child, a son named Orestes. When his father was murdered, Orestes was still young. He was sent away from Mycenae to keep him safe from danger. Years passed. Orestes grew into a man, but he never forgot what happened to his father. The pain and anger stayed inside him, just as it had stayed inside his mother years before. Eventually, Orestes returned to Mycenae. He came back with one clear purpose. He wanted to avenge his father's death. Orestes found his mother, Clytemnestra. He found Aegisthus. And in a moment filled with pain and anger, he killed them both, just as his father had once been killed. But this act did not bring him peace. Ancient spirits of revenge, called the Furies, began to hunt him. They were terrifying goddesses whose only purpose was to punish anyone who killed a family member. Because Orestes had killed his own mother, the Furies chased him relentlessly, filling his mind with guilt and fear. For a long time, Orestes ran. He suffered. He nearly lost his mind under the endless pressure of guilt and punishment. Finally, the story reached its turning point. The gods themselves stepped in. A trial was held to judge Orestes for his actions. After hearing both sides, the gods made a final decision. Orestes was forgiven. The endless cycle of family killing family, generation after generation, was finally declared over. The curse that began with Tantalus, all those years before, that passed through Atreus and Thyestes, that passed through Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, finally came to an end with their son. 4 generations of pain, revenge, and blood, and finally it stopped. Think back to the beginning of this story. A powerful king, standing helpless in his own bathtub, killed by the person closest to him. Now you understand why. Agamemnon did not die because of a stronger enemy soldier. He did not die on the battlefield at Troy. He died because of choices made generations before he was even born, choices that grew stronger with every generation that followed. His grandfather served children as a meal. His father murdered his own brother's sons. And Agamemnon himself sacrificed his own daughter for the promise of wind and victory. Agamemnon's family was cursed, and every choice he made the curse stronger. But maybe this was never truly magic. Maybe a curse is simply something else. A curse is a choice. A choice made by one person, then repeated by their child, and then repeated again by the next child after that. It continues, generation after generation, until finally someone has the courage to say no. If you were Agamemnon, standing at Aulis with no wind, with 1,000 ships waiting, with every king watching you, would you sacrifice your own daughter to win the war? Or would you walk away and lose everything? There is no easy answer. Every choice in this story destroys someone. Write your answer in the comments. Tell me what you would do. I want to know. And if you like stories like this, stories about power, family, and the price people pay for their choices, subscribe to this channel. New stories come out every week. You will not want to miss the next one.